Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting the International Cooperative Alliance, Asia and Pacific, to be part of the People's Economic Forum 2022. Let me begin by offering our solidarity with cooperators and people of Sri Lanka as you go through very, very difficult times. I was in Colombo in February and did see the long lines at petrol stations, hours of power cuts, spiraling rise in prices, and heard about hardships borne by people. That it would, in a couple of months, lead to a people's movement and the overthrow of an unpopular regime is among the most significant events of the year. It speaks to the strength of the Sri Lankan people coming together in small numbers, organizing and organically building a movement. The power of citizen mobilization and resistance has captured global attention and within Sri Lanka injected energy and ideas and redefined the role of the citizens and their relationship with the state. There is opportunity to build on this movement and create a new direction for the country. When I look at articles on Sri Lanka, inclusive figures prominently in the headlines. To name a few, ensuring an inclusive, sustainable future, developing an inclusive political culture, from crisis to inclusive economic growth. Inclusiveness is needed to address the structural inequalities, bring in political accountability, address social and economic justice, and ensure food security and social protection. It is therefore heartening to see the People's Economic Forum 2022 being organized to bring attention of the national development planning discourse to the potential and the role of the cooperative sector. The three objectives listed for PEF 2022 to raise awareness of the role cooperatives play in achieving the SDGs, engage policymakers to facilitate an enabling environment, and build transboundary cooperation become very important. For the cooperative sector, there is more than just a business case for inclusion and equality. Cooperatives are controlled by members and guided by values and principles that promote inclusion. From the beginning of the cooperative movement, it has empowered ordinary people with the means to control their own financial futures and to have a stake in their own enterprises. The sector needs to take a lead in inclusion. The cooperative sector worldwide has about 1 billion members in over 110 countries. It is estimated that cooperatives account for more than 100 million jobs around the world. Across different countries, the proportion of cooperative membership to population varies. To give a few examples, 1 in 2 persons in Finland is a member of cooperative, 1 in 3 in Canada and New Zealand, and 1 in 4 in the United States, Malaysia, and Germany. Cooperatives membership represent as much as 1 in 2 households in Finland and 1 in 3 in Japan. So how do we broaden our base and make ourselves more inclusive, as some of these countries have done, becomes very important. Cooperatives draw their strength from the statement of cooperative identity, which includes the definition of cooperatives, values, and principles. The guidance notes to the cooperative principles, which was released in 2015, make specific references to the inclusiveness of cooperatives. To quote from the guidance notes, inclusiveness and the prohibition of discrimination is in the tradition of the founders of the cooperative movement. In the 1840s, the Rochdale pioneers were socially progressive and radically ahead of their time in admitting women and all classes of society, irrespective of political persuasion, of religious beliefs, as equal members of their cooperative. To be open to all people, cooperatives need to take positive action to be inclusive. This is enshrined in the first principle. that cooperatives are voluntary organizations open to all persons able to use their services and willing to accept the responsibilities of membership without gender, social, racial, political, or religious discrimination. The board is the place where we need to start and see more diversity and inclusiveness. Anne Hoyt, the chair of the Group Health Cooperative of South Central Wisconsin, USA, speaking at the 33rd World Cooperative Congress in Seoul in 2021, said, "Board members should be diverse as our members and our communities. But one, diversity has no value unless the diverse voices around the table are encouraged to bring their unique life experiences and perspectives. Cooperatives need to learn how well their board reflects their community and look for ways to attract more diverse board candidates by widening the pool of potential directors and building governance skills among members. Given the current times in Sri Lanka, it becomes more important to reach out to diverse sections of society, have an inclusive culture, as we've seen that many young people have come out on the streets, have shown their passion to ensure a more just and inclusive society. So this is the time that we need to be having our outreach to see how we can bring these young people into the fold. Women constitute a significant percentage of the workforce, but in every industry and sector, women are underrepresented in leadership positions. This is true for the corporate sector as well as the cooperative sector. Women account for 33% of the farm labor force in India, and in Sri Lanka, nearly 40%. Entrenched patriarchy results in women being discriminated against, especially around inheritance and ownership, more so in agriculture. Women in agriculture are often disproportionately affected by climate and weather-induced disasters and experience climate change differently to men. Women are overrepresented in lower paid occupations and lower grade of all industries. These patterns arise from more than just choices at the individual level. They are the result of structural factors and social norms. Women continue to do most of the unpaid work, which drives women into flexible, casual, or part-time work, restricting the roles available to them and curtailing their opportunities for advancement. This in turn deprives cooperatives of talented staff and decreases diversity at the executive and board levels. The Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals in Australia in 2017 released a landmark report, ELIZA's project, Gender Inclusion in the CME Sector in Australia, where they found that too often equality in the workplace is framed as a women's problem, diverting focus from workplace attitudes or behaviors that create or impact this inequality. This then leads to solutions that target women for their deficiencies rather than changing the system. Gender inclusion is ultimately about economic participation and ensuring women can get to the top and get access to power. There is a business case for cooperatives to embrace gender inclusion. An increasing body of research confirms the link between improved gender inclusion and better and more profitable business and a healthier economy. ICA President Ariel Guarco, speaking at the 2020 Global Youth Forum in Malaysia, said, "Young people are not the future of the movement. They must be the present because of the urgent problems of today mean the future of our movement and our civilization is at stake." This very amply reflects in recent months in Sri Lanka. We've seen that young people, millennials as we call them, rate social and economic inequality as the top challenge the world faces globally and locally, and very relevant in Sri Lanka. They favor working in a place where they derive a sense of purpose and fulfillment, where the focus is on people and purpose, not just products and profits. Cooperatives fit well with the aspirations of millennials. How do we reach out to them and bring them into the cooperative fold? A couple of examples. In Korea, the consumer cooperative ICOP has recognized that there is a problem of young people leaving rural areas for the cities. In response, they have created dream parks to make agriculture and allied activities an attractive option for youth to stay in rural areas, provide a space that has all the amenities that they are looking for, and promote a culture of caring for the environment. The women members of ICOP have invested their own money and made this a reality. These parks contribute to the revitalization of the local economy by attracting visitors. It retains young people in rural areas. It creates jobs, increases the market for local produce, and supports local students through scholarships and donating goods. Another example is the Singapore National Cooperative Federation. Their co-op scholarship attracts, develops, and nurtures suitable talents to enter the ranks of the cooperative movement in Singapore. The successful scholars have the opportunity to understand the principles and mission of cooperatives to contribute to society. Upon graduation, the scholar is bonded to SNCF for a period of up to 4 years and may be deployed to work in cooperatives and related sectors. We can think of other ways in which we can attract young people to the cooperative fold. And I see that there is one session organized on this very topic. Cooperatives have been in the business of financial inclusion long before the phrase became fashionable. SANASA is a prime example of helping the underprivileged in rural areas to promote self-help, to ensure they are not left behind. It was also envisioned that cooperative development must be pursued from the ground up by people themselves so they can master their own destinies. The experience of credit cooperatives across countries have shown that they enhance social fabric, reduce inequality, and increase growth potential. Overall, cooperatives offer an excellent vehicle to support the provision of economic opportunity in a valued and empowering way, supportive of inclusive growth. They have also shown to be more resilient during times of crisis. In the Philippines, studies have shown that cooperatives provide differentiated economic effects for members, supporting their primary motivation for joining. These effects, together with data supporting an accompanying greater sense of financial security and well-being among cooperative members, underscores the positive role that cooperatives play. The level of satisfaction suggests that the right types of investment in cooperatives can further inclusive growth. One of the biggest challenges to cooperatives is the lack of awareness of their economic potential among the governments, development actors, and the general public. The 2030 Agenda, or the Sustainable Development Goals, makes a strong case for shifting global priorities towards an alternative, inclusive, and sustainable model, such as the cooperative business model. The COVID-19 crisis has revealed deep-rooted systemic biases in the current socio-political economic model, creating an opportunity for a model that is inclusive and environmentally sustainable. However, despite the size, potential, and significant contributions of the cooperative sector locally and globally, their visibility in national and international development agendas, monitoring and reporting remains minimal. At the ICA Asia Pacific Regional Office, we did a study of the voluntary national reviews and came out with the paper Cooperatives Present but Not Visible evidence from voluntary national reviews. The voluntary national reviews are reports that each country voluntarily commits to present each year, where they show how they have progressed on the various sustainable development goals. While doing a study across countries, we found that cooperatives are largely mentioned in relation to SDG 1, no poverty, 2, no hunger, 8, decent work, and 13, climate action. This is not surprising given the number of cooperatives working in agriculture and in rural areas. The frequent reference to cooperatives in SDG 8 shows that governments expect them to play their role in promoting inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work. We found that there is a correlation between cooperatives being mentioned in the national development plans and their targets reflected in the voluntary national reviews. This indicates the need for apex organizations and federations such as SANASA, and the NCCSL in Sri Lanka, which I understand is present in the PEF, to be responsible to show how the work of cooperatives is aligned to the national development strategies and the need to reflect cooperatives in the VNR. This active role of government departments overseeing cooperatives also influences the mention of cooperative. So both agencies which are directly involved in cooperatives, be it the federations or national apexes, and the government departments which represent cooperatives need to work in tandem. The priority areas of governments in most countries, and especially in Sri Lanka, match the interest of cooperatives, and both need to work on raising awareness, sharing experiences, and disseminating information. This requires an enabling environment, a process that is participatory with a sense of ownership. While cooperatives can positively impact people and communities, policy can support cooperatives in so far as they work towards these broader societal goals. They can make a difference in increasing access to affordable quality products, services, suppliers, and markets, lowering costs and serving markets and communities, historically seen as underserved. Governments can help by easing eligibility and regulation by expanding programs to better include cooperatives. Policymakers can encourage preferential procurement and contracting processes for cooperatives with a clear social mandate and mission, including those operating in underserved markets. To give a couple of examples, in India, there is a new Ministry of Cooperation which was formed last year. And they have recently announced their plans to computerize around 63,000 primary agricultural cooperative societies. This in the hope that it will increase efficiency, bring transparency and accountability in operations, and facilitate to diversified business and services. They have also enabled cooperatives to participate in the government's e-marketplace. This is a one-stop shop for the government where common user goods and services are procured by government departments across the country. And so this gives a tremendous opportunity for cooperatives to be present on this market and enhance their business. In the Philippines, the Cooperative Development Authority has issued guidelines for registration of a technology services cooperative. And this is a special type of cooperative organized among registered cooperatives to provide technology to its members. So again, one cooperative does not need to do everything. A group of cooperatives can come together and see how common services in technology can be shared. And technology, as we know, and the COVID pandemic has shown, is so important for functioning of organization. In the Philippines, they've also created the Cooperative Business Matching Information System. This is a global project to introduce local products to the global market chain. A component of the cooperative-based supply and value chain initiative exclusively for registered cooperatives as merchants or vendors. So again, this is one way in which the government in India and the Philippines are giving preferential treatment, are giving cooperatives opportunities to participate in the larger marketplace rather than having to do things individually. So how do we leverage our collective scale becomes important. The lack of data and visibility is a common weak link across many sectors and countries. However, this gap also creates an opportunity for the cooperative sector to raise its voice for inclusion in national data collection and statistics. With a global presence of over 1 billion members, the scope and potential of the cooperative sector to implement and achieve SDGs is very high. Inclusion of cooperatives in national data collection and development planning will enable more inclusive and positive outcomes for implementation of the SDGs. The government of Nepal has identified the strong potential and power of cooperatives to contribute towards poverty reduction, service delivery, gender equality, and good governance. The National Cooperative Federation of Nepal, which is their apex organization, use this recognition to work with the government and the UN agencies to ensure they are recognized in the national plan and included in monitoring. The status and roadmap 2016 to 2030, prepared by the National Planning Commission, Government of Nepal, mentioned cooperatives and assigns target. So each year, when the government collects data on the VNRs and how the country is doing, cooperative information about cooperatives is going to be collected and reflected. So this is a system which has already been put in place and will continue. So we can look at something similar in Sri Lanka too. While we have seen episodes of economic growth in different parts of the world, a clear lesson is that growth is sustainable only if it is inclusive. Governments around the world are therefore anxious that even as they pursue economic growth, they must make time and see that growth processes are inclusive. Inclusive growth is a process where the poor contribute to growth and the poor benefit from growth. Cooperatives can be an effective instrumentality for inclusive growth and a powerful platform for enfranchising the less privileged. The cooperative business has been more resilient as its source of stability is the inclusiveness embedded in its very structures. The ICF blueprint for a cooperative decade makes the case for cooperatives as builders of economic, social, and environmental sustainability. As member-owned economic enterprises, cooperatives are less likely to compromise on quality in pursuit of short-term profit, focusing more on longevity. As social actors, they are inclusive and build the stock of social capital on which successful societies and economies thrive. As participatory organizations, concern for future environment outcomes are voiced democratically by members without needing to be calculated in terms of return on investment. I do hope the People's Economic Forum comes out with concrete steps to address important issues being deliberated in the areas of cooperative banking, health and nutrition, leadership, and policy support. I wish you all the best. From the ICAP side, we are ready to support in whichever way we can. Thank you again for inviting the International Cooperative Alliance, Asia and Pacific, to be part of this important People's Economic Forum 2022. Thank you.